Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Sorry for the little bit late of a start. Welcome to the Q1 RC West Oversight Committee public session. I'm joined by Ashley Kelly, Chris Sanford, and other folks from RC West. My name is Elena Coppola-Alford, representing ISO Stakeholder Affairs. And I'm going to start with a couple of housekeeping reminders for today. This call is being recorded for informational and convenience purposes only. And please request permission from RC West before reprinting any material transcriptions. And materials related to the RC West Oversight Committee are going to be available on our website. You go to kaiso.com, navigate to products and services, and then RC West. And that moved in the middle of last year when we updated our website. So to raise your hand, this is a little bit of an older version of WebEx, and the raise hand icon is hidden within the participant panel. So if you look on the bottom right, you'll see the chat and participant panels. If you open those up, the raise hand icon is at the bottom of the participant panel, and you can enter your questions in the chat or raise your hand. And if you connected outside of the WebEx, you can press *3 to get into the question queue. And please remember to state your name and who you're representing before asking your question or making your comment. If you need technical assistance during the meeting, you can send the chat to the event producer. You'll see them as Intelor Events. Today's event producer is Stacy. And you can send your questions in the chat to all panelists, or you can send them to me, Elena Coppola-Alford. So we have a full agenda for today. I'm going to hand it over to Tricia, John, and our chair and vice chair for Oversight Committee Business, where we're going to welcome the new folks, and then we're going to go over our Q4 annual charter review from last year. We're going to go over the First Light Energy with the request status and the Ellis Power Grid CATOP onboarding update. Then we're going to go through the operations updates with John providing the updates on the RC operations reorg, Raja covering emergency declarations, Samson going over the cold weather event, and Cody covering the LA fires. And Kathy is going to give the procedures update, and Kendall and Rand will cover the RC metrics year-end 2024 update. And then we're going to have working group updates for the FERC 881 and ECC expansion update from Raja, and then talk about any future agenda items. And then we will open up for public comment from there. I'm going to hand it over to John Phipps and Tricia Johnson.
So just go ahead, John, for our chair and our vice chair. Why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say good afternoon. Thank you, everybody. Welcome to the first RC West Oversight Committee of 2025. It should be a good year, most likely a busy year, but we're happy to be in front of you and just give you some updates. And then Tricia, I'll let you do the welcoming for Chris and Ashley.
Yeah, so our new chair for 2025-2026, Chris Sanford from Bonneville Power Administration, and Vice Chair Ashley Kelly from Arizona Public Service. And Chris actually is recovering from an illness and has lost his voice, and asked if Ashley would stand in as chair today. So he's here, but Ashley will be our spokesperson. So welcome. And I don't know if you have any opening remarks and kind of kick us off here in the new year.
Good afternoon, everybody. No real opening remarks. Appreciate the time taken out of your day to be here and go over some of these items. Looking forward to working with you guys. If there are topics you want us to touch on, please feel free to send those to Chris or myself throughout the year as well. And then other than that, looking forward to the agenda today.
Thanks everybody for attending.
Thanks, Chris and Ashley. Okay, all right. Stacy, next slide, please. So next slide, please. So just a quick update on the annual charter review that we completed at the Q4 meeting. The only update that we had was to the guideline on the decisional voting rules update to add an electronic voting option. The voting on that was actually completed in January, and it did pass. We didn't have any changes to the charter itself. So both of the documents have been updated and reposted on the website on the RC West page. So you can see those now, and the effective dates have been updated as well. We have sent out a request on behalf of First Light Energy to become a signatory to the WIDSA, that's the Western Interconnection Data Sharing Agreement. They are a new generation-only balancing authority that's interconnected at SRP's Able Station. They need 80% of the WIDSA signatories to approve in order to become a signatory. And currently, we only have 34 yes votes. So I think they're trying to go live around March 3rd or so. We need about another 20 votes. So I'm coordinating with our legal department to see which entities haven't responded yet. I think some are probably in the RC West area, some are in the SPP area. So if you've received one of those messages and you weren't sure, what it was about, and you have any questions, please reply to Martha or to myself if you've got questions about it. But I'm also going to follow up because it's possible that those messages went to people who have since retired or changed roles, but we'd like to help them reach that quorum. Just a reminder that WIDSA is just so they can access, outage information, participate in the ICCP data exchange, procedure exchange, all those critical things when they're interconnected with other entities in the Western Interconnection. So we want to help make that happen. And then the last thing is an onboarding update related to Ellis Power Grid, California. If you can go to the next slide, please, Stacy. So this is a transmission operator that is onboarding in California ISO BA area. They're actually interconnecting into Pacific Gas and Electric system near Gates. And the facility is actually undergoing kind of the pre-commercial testing right now, and they're on track. Procedures are on track and close to being finalized. Their go live is planned for March, and I have word from WEC that their TOP certification is on track, and I think actually expected to close out this week. So this will probably be the last update that we'll be providing related to that project. So I don't know if Ellis Power Grid California joined us on the call today, but congratulations on that if they're here. Next slide, please. Okay, so RC West operations update. I don't know if there were any questions on the Oversight Committee business before we go on.
I'm not seeing any hands or any questions in the chat. If you want to find the raise hand icon, open a participant panel, and it's located at the bottom of that panel in case you want to ask questions later.
Okay, all right. First topic, John.
Yeah, if we can go to the next slide, please. Let's see, let me just start. We've had RC West, the organization is a part of the grid operations department here at the California ISO, where we also have the California Balancing Authority, market operations, our operational readiness, and then RC West. So there's like 4 different teams that are kind of under the current grid operations here. We were making a few changes based on some retirement notifications we've received, as well as trying to kind of realign us a little bit better based on some customer feedback. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So this kind of shows the current structure that's effective today, or has been effective for the last couple of years. have Tricia Johnstone and the Director of Operational Readiness. Tim Beach has been over the RC West. Brian Murray, California Balancing Authority, which we call real-time operations. And then within the real-time operations, that also included our market operations team. And then the RC operators were actually a shared management between RC West and the real-time operations managers. The real-time operation managers are on shift, and so they were able to kind of provide some on-shift management with the RC operators. But we are making a few adjustments here, and part of this is Tim Beach did announce his retirement for later this year. It's given us a chance to make some other changes. And then we're looking to move market operations out from not reporting directly to the California Balancing Authority. The operating engineers have been working very closely with all the functions, and currently they're in a different division, but we are going to bring them back into grid operations. So I can go to the next slide, please. So effective next Monday, the 24th, Tricia's director, her position, she still has the same team. I'll touch the box, the screen there at the bottom in a minute. Sherry Pryor, who's the current manager over market operations, is going to report directly to me. As I mentioned, Tim Beach is going to be retiring, but he's going to be staying on till early July. But so with us bringing the OE services back into grid operations, Raja will be reporting to me. He'll bring his team. And then we did hire just recently 2 managers for the RC West team, and the RC operators report directly to them. These managers are going to be off shift, but we did divide the team so that each manager has roughly 9 of the operators, keeps it at a more manageable level. And then they'll be here to be on-hand management during the days the crews are on shift. And then on the right, you can see that we still have the California Balancing Authority. We did make a small name change from real-time operations to BA operations to more clearly kind of identify and define these different functions. So, so that's kind of showing now that we have market operations as a team. I'm going to jump over Tim to go to Raja. His title changed to RC West operations. That includes both his operating engineer services as well as the reliability coordination function. And then again, the California BA operations team. Tricia got a new team added recently. We did stand up a new, it's a fairly small, it's a 3-person team, but they're here to try to help identify issues and handle issues as they come up in real time, and do a little bit more filtering and assessment of patches coming into production, model updates, and enhancements to some of the applications, so that we're trying to stand them up to do internal and external coordination with some of the changes, but also be the central point of contact when we do have technical issues with some of our applications. So Gina just was hired a couple of weeks ago, and we are doing further interviews for some of the SMEs on her team. So this is the new team that will be effective next Monday. And so I'll stop there to see if there's any questions on any of these changes. All right, and I think most of you know Raja, but just again, so he'll be leading the RC West meetings and representative on the RC West Oversight Committee going forward. Tim is sticking around, so if you have questions, we have until early July to continue to use his knowledge and experience to help transition the RCs, get the managers up to speed on some of the duties he performed, and just make sure that Raja gets launched, successfully with the new team. But other than that, I'll turn it back to the next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I'm the next presenter. Yep. Thank you. Again, I think this slide is just a statistics of how many EEAs, how many EEA watches and how many EEAs 1, 2, and 3 were issued last year for 2024. Next slide, please. Okay. So as you can see, there's overall 61 EEAs that includes the watches as well as 1, 2, and 3 that have been issued. For most of the watches, for at least for 2024, for in support of SENACE BA, so that was around 30 of them for SENACE BA. And then out of the EA3s, at least 10 of them for SENACE BA as well. So in support of that, their work. So that's total. As far as the transmission emergency, most of the transmission emergencies were in the CAISO, TOP area, Humboldt area. Other than that, nothing major occurred last year. I know some of the EAs, at least once, were in support of the MLK weather that happened back in 2024, January 2024. So some of the EA ones were at least for that event. Other than that, nothing major happened last year. So hopefully we can continue that for this year as well. Any questions on this? Thank you. I think we can hand off to the next one, Samson and Cody.
Yeah, and I do want to jump in. I apologize. I did not identify Samson and Cody as the new RC managers. So I do want to congratulate them. Samson Adigan, Cody Smith will be leading the RC West team, and I'm very happy to have them in these roles. So I'll turn it over to them, and they can introduce themselves.
Right. Thanks, John and Raja. My name is Samson Adigun. I've been around for a while with the RC West team. So happy to serve now in this role now as RC manager along with Cody. So yeah, I just got one slide to present, which is the next slide here, and it's just an update on recent cold weather event that we had here last month in January. Obviously, last year's Martin Luther King weekend was severe cold weather. We experienced, I think, about 8 EAs last year. Just between those 3 days in January. We also had a transmission emergency as well. So, this year around, our forecasting team was identifying potential severe weather as well during the MLK weekend for this year. So we were preparing for that. Next slide, please. So yeah, we saw between January 19 and the 21st, mean temperatures, between 20 to 40 degrees below normal for a large portion of the U.S. We're concerned about the Pacific Northwest. We saw in the forecast some, especially in Avista, Montana, Pacific Core territories, anticipating some cold conditions. So we had a coordination call the Friday, the 17th, before that weekend. Checked in with entities. We weren't anticipating any issues, but all entities were prepared. We did move on to condition status orange for the 20th. And just as a reminder, RC West has 4 levels, green, yellow, orange, and red is the most severe. So once we're in condition status orange, we normally also have like a morning call with the entities involved. So we did have like a 3 a.m. call for the 20th of January. But overall, we also, just in preparation to ensure that there was adequate capacity into the Northwest, we canceled some transmission outages limiting capacity, mainly the PDCI. There was an outage limiting PDCI in the south to north direction, which the RC canceled. But overall, throughout that weekend, no EEAs. There was no issue. There was one EA watch by SENACE, which was totally unrelated to the severe cold weather anticipated in the Northwest. We did see high on scheduled flow, on the eastern side of the interconnection along path 80, Montana's path 80, and WAPA's path 31. But those were managed using the unscheduled flow mitigation procedures without any issues. So that's the update there on the cold weather event. I'll turn it over to Cody.
Thanks, Sampson. Cody Smith, the other RC manager. For those who don't know me, I've been with RC West since the startup, about a year in training, year in as a grid ops manager, and now one of the RC managers. So I did add my contact info if you don't have it into the chat. I was not the first C. Smith here, so if you need to email me, you need that C.O. Smith. I'm going to do the LA Fire Operations Update. I'm sure either if you were in the area, you were impacted by these fires, or you saw them on the news. First one, Palisades Fire. This one didn't have as much impact on the power grid, but obviously very devastating to the local community, Pacific Palisades. This did force out the Tarzana Olympic 230 kV and Tarzana Olympic 138 kV lines just after midnight on the 11th of January. It's very late season fires to have these popping up in January. However, these transmission towers, Tarzana Olympic, also had the PDCI ground electrode that goes out to the ocean. It shares towers with those lines. So without the ground electrode, monopole operation of PDCI was unavailable. If a single pole of PDCI were to trip, both poles would have to trip. So LDWP forced off PDCI a few hours later at 0800 on January 11th. This also had impact potentially to one natural gas line. They were monitoring that line for fires, monitoring it for mudslides after the fires, and that would make the El Segundo units unavailable. Second fire is the Eaton Fire. Destroyed, I know this number has gone up from there, 7,000 structures in Altadena and Pasadena, and loss of multiple lines and load. There were, for 220 kV lines that were forced out of service, Gold Goodrich, Mesa Vincent 1 and 2, Eagle Rock Mesa, and Vincent Rio Hondo number 1. Between the Eaton Fire and another fire that's coming up next, Hearst, all the lines to Eagle Rock were forced out of service, so that substation was dropped, along with about 92 megawatts of load, and that was on the 8th at just after midnight, 34 after. Later, all load was transferred off of Gold and Eagle Rock subs, and both substations were de-energized, but the load was picked up by neighboring substations. And then the third major fire in the LA area, there were other smaller fires, but these are the ones that impacted the transmission system. This Hearst fire, as you can see on this GIS overlay, was located in a very dense corridor of power equipment. For our lines, we have red is 500 kV, blue is 230 kV, and you may see that black line in there too. That's PDCI, and they were all within this fire map. There was loss of Eagle Rock Silmar 220 kV, Part D Silmar number 2, Adelanto Rinaldi 500 kV, Victorville Rinaldi 500 kV, and PDCI HVDC. PDCI initially locked out due to the loss of lines around PDCI, but it could be returned if needed. The loss of lines and load in LA and SCE's area caused frequency to rise. It was at 59.88 hertz, and with the load drop jumped up to 60.086 hertz, exceeding frequency trigger limit high at 2211 on January 7th. And that's it for the fire updates.
Hey,
Thank you, Cody. If we can go to the next page, we're going to move over to procedure updates from Kathy.
Hello, everyone. This is Kathy Fernandez with your procedures update. So the first slide here, I have the upcoming changes. Quite a few of these are actually for annual or periodic review. And just FYI, annual is obviously annual, and a periodic is a 3-year review. So that is the difference there. But so we have RC 120, 120A, 120B, and 120C all coming up for annual review. 120, 120A, and 120C will be out for comment shortly for a time period. So those are going to be published and effective on hopefully March 27th or thereabouts, depending on if any comments come back in for that data specification. But there's some various changes due to NERC Alert 3 language and a few other minor changes in there coming up. We have RC 520, RC 540, 540A. Those are all for periodic review, along with RC 550. And those are March 13th and March 27th. We've got RC 9000, the open loop guideline for annual review as well, with minor edits. That I don't have an estimated date right now, but I would suspect that to be early to mid-March. And then we've got RC 9250. That one is it's to potentially be retired after completion of procedure review with PAC and SPP. SAMHSA is working to coordinate that. And once that has been confirmed, then that will be retired. And then we have RC 9330, also for annual review, with the target published was today, and I believe that should still be going out this afternoon, unless there's any issues with that. But I don't suspect there will be. So that should be going out. Any questions with any of these upcoming changes? Okay, if we can go to the next.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, Elena, thank you so much. The next slide, please. Okay, here we have recently published procedures. So we published RC 130, notification requirements for real-time events, on February 1st for a periodic review, updates by removing outages from the event. We removed two of the items, since the thresholds are more related to planning and not actually real-time related. So those were removed. We added D-rate. Yeah, just minor edits on that. I apologize. Then we also have RC 210, monitoring frequency and balancing authority. That was also effective February 1st. We added a new section for persistent abnormal frequency due to incorrect ACE, and then a few minor other administrative updates. RC 330A, list of ties with neighboring RCs, that was updated due to adding a new tie for BNBA to SRP. Then we've got our RC 430, the GMD operating plan, that was also effective February 1st due to the grid or the GMD monitor transition to BCRC effective February 1st. And then we had RC 9710, Southern New Mexico area for an annual review with a procedure title change and now identifies the SOL as Epic SOL, and a few other minor changes for clarification. That was effective January 27th. RC 9110 was updated Northwest Washington area import IROL for an annual review with clarification criteria for triggering EMS alarm when RT-VSA limit is below the study limit, and then minor edits in the references section. That was published on January 9th. January 6th, we published RC 520, loss of monitoring and analysis tools. We updated language in section 3.2 and 3.3 to include notification from service desk on ICCP link degradation as a trigger for RC actions, and changed event reporting channel from MRTO to the JIC lead in instances where event reporting is required. And then on January 1st, we had updated RC 600, RC West implementation of common interconnection-wide methodology, and the RC 600A, Western Interconnection Modeling and Monitoring Common Methodology, both for annual review. RC 600A was updated to include some changes previously missed that was included in BCRC's version, and just a little bit of cleanup. And those were, again, effective January 1st. So I believe, I think we might actually have a couple more on the next slide, if you can move to the next one, please. And then here we had RC 9010, unscheduled flow mitigation on qualified paths, and RC 9020, nuclear plant interface coordination. These were both published on December 20th. On RC 9010, we added path 80 as a qualified path in table 1, and updated the requirement to qualify for USF step 3 or 4 in section 2.1 per the latest WIUFMP doc on the SPP UFC website. References, some minor edits there. And then in RC 9020, we added APP system restoration plan, and then updated the 500 kV steady stage maximum range in Appendix A. And then on December 16th, we published RC 9000, open loop procedure, to include the PDCI south to north limit. We moved the section on potential open loop to be prior. We did some cleanup in the procedure and various changes noted here. I'm not going to read through all of them. And then on December 5th, we published RC 210A, reserve sharing group information. We updated the name of Northwest Power Pool to Western Power Pool, and a few other minor changes. RC 330, for list of ties, we replaced Nature Enter with BHE Montana, and then RC 9040 for an annual review and minor edits. I know that was a lot. Are there any questions to any of these recently published? Okay.
I'm not seeing any questions.
Okay, great. That's all I've got. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, Kathy. Our next presentation is the RC Metrics year in 2024 with Kendall and Rand.
Thanks, Yelena. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kendall Parra with the Network Applications Group under Ankit Mishra. I'll be talking about the next two slides. Next slide, please. So the slide shows the SE residual errors by KV in 2024. And in Q4, we could see that the total number trended within an average range for the year as a whole. So in between about 9 million and 11 million. Next slide, please. And this slide goes over the non-converged contingencies. So you can see the general trend throughout the year. The residual or the non-converged contingency count went down, which is pretty good. So the previous year, you can see in the blue trend, which in general trended at or above the non-converged count in 2024. So this is suggesting an overall downward trend. And I think the goal is to keep these values as low as they are now, or keep bringing them down further. From here, I'll turn it over to Rand. Thank you.
Thank you, Kendall. Can you move to the next slide, please? Yeah. Hi, everyone. Randu speaking from Real-Time OE Group. So this is the year-end review for the DACA accuracy. This is our OPA2. So compare the percentage of contingency flow gate pair now observed in OPA, but showed up in real time. And there's a slight increase in the last quarter of the 2024. But if you compare to Q4 of 2023, the percentage of last quarter is similar. I think it's going back to Kindle. The next one.
This is Rachel Melton. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you, Rachel.
Thanks for confirming. I can cover this last metric slide. So for the city ticket issue resolution progress, we're showing here the number of cases that are opened and closed by month. So we had an increase of more cases in Q4, but those were getting closed out as well. It's showing the average business days to close here on the graph. And the remainder of the RC metrics will be covered in the executive session. So I believe this is the last slide. I'll turn it back to you, Yelena.
Hey, Elena, this is Raj. I can take over from here. Good afternoon, folks.
Yeah, we're going to move to the working group update. Sorry about that. I just I was double muted. We're going to go to your, slide 29. Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Yep. This is related to the FERC Order 881, ambient adjust rating and dynamic line ratings. Next slide, please. I know folks were aware that ISO RCWest were working towards requesting FERC an extension to the original FERC Order 881 compliance deadline. As you are aware, originally July 2025 was supposed to be, is supposed to be a compliance deadline. And we, as we have been discussing with RCWest TOPs and as well as CAISO, CAISO has been too, we have requested an extension at the FERC. I mean, again, it has not been granted yet. If it is granted, the way we have filed for an extension, it technically gives us more time in the sense for the overall implementation. Not that we are trying to delay everything. We're still working towards implementing all aspects of the implementation. But this gives an extra time for us if FERC approves the extension. So what does that mean? What does that mean, right? So for ISO and RC West, we are asking overall implementation to be December 17, 2026. What does that mean, right? So I have a next slide that will explain what we are doing from here on until that time frame. What are the different aspects of ISOs and different aspects of RC West compliance are being implemented. The tools changes are being implemented. And then the additional language in the compliance where it gives some of the PTOs for ISO. They were wanting more time to be compliant, so that gives some additional time for them to be compliant on that aspect of it, right? In the sense, if FERC approves it, they would not need to submit the ratings until such deadline for them. But the tools will still be implemented because there's a different roles that ISO has, and as well as RC West, there's a market operator role that ISO has. Part of that real-time market, EDAM market, right? So those things will still be implemented and be ready for the TOPs that are still willing to be compliant with the FERC 81 and make sure their processes are ready. So I'll take a stop here and see if there's any questions with the language. I know it's a little bit convoluted, but there's a lot of moving parts in this filing that we had, right? As I mentioned, there's different roles that we were trying to accomplish, and different TOPs that are ready to submit, and then some TOPs are not ready to submit, some PTOs are not ready. So we're trying to manage all those things through this extension process. So it looks a little bit complicated, but there's a method to the madness. I'll stop here and see if there's any questions. I have a next slide that will explain more detail what ISO RCWS are working towards to.
I'm not seeing any hands in the queue, Raja.
Raja, I also wanted to throw out, we did have a request, I know, from someone on the Oversight Committee to have a deeper discussion, I think, in the executive session around what all the entities might be doing with their implementations on this. So probably if everybody can kind of take a note on that, if you don't want to talk about it now in the public session, we can go deeper on this in the exec session, which is following this.
Yep. Thank you, Tricia. Yeah, we'll participate in that call as well, and then we can help explain. But I have one more slide that details what ISO RC West are working towards to from the tools point of view. So this is some of the. I mean, again, most of the dates on this slide has not been changed. We have talked with the TOPs early December with some of this. The one big change is the first box. Originally, again, it's not a change. The tool is ready. ISO RC West, right, can right now have the tool in the sense that can receive the ratings through AAR ratings through ICCP. This is just for the real-time reliability applications, right? Just for EMS and an EMNA, which is the RTCA and HANA process. It can receive the ICCP. We're actually working with some of the TOPs. I know IID, we have been working with IID to get some of those ratings. And we're also working with other TOPs to define the mappings, because there's a lot of manual work there, especially the real-time ratings, because the SCADA systems have to talk together. So the mappings have to be established, right? So we're working with them. And at this point, everything should be ready to go by June 2025. We will be able to actually use those ratings in our production systems through the mappings the mapping work that we're working right now. So any of the TOPs that have not been working with us, right? We can start. Please do reach out to us, either me or Tricia. We can work with the Sergil, who's our subject matter expert that can help us with some of this mapping work and set up so that we can start using them in June 2025. Again, this data will only be used in our real-time EMS and RTCA process. There's no market component right now. None of this will be ready until for the slide. Any questions on this particular June 2025 implementation? And then the next component would be the WebLiner tool. I know we have been working with the TOPs, and we have provided some of the APIs that the TOPs can use to send us the look-ahead ratings. So that tool will be ready. It's being tested right now by June 2025. What does that mean? Even though it's going to go into production, at this point, we are not planning to use those ratings in the downstream applications yet. So this is more of a analysis purposes. We are planning to work with the TOPs or PTOs that are ready to actually send those ratings to us. We can receive those ratings and we can actually perform some analysis and see how the ratings are changing, right, between different seasons. So it's just trying to get more analysis and how much the ratings are changing compared to the seasonal rating compared to the temperature adjusted rating, right? So we can, our intention is to develop those analysis and actually share with our operators before we start using them. So essentially, this is just a monitoring and evaluating phase, not actually using any of the downstream. The next box, that is the first big implementation would be the January 2026. Our intention is to use those ARs in the real-time market, which is the EAM market. ISO point of view, they plan to use that in the EAM market starting January 2026. Again, this is only for the TOPs, our EAM entities that can use those ratings, that have access to those ratings, that have implemented their part of it, and they plan to support send those ratings through the webline R. ISO can use those in the EAA market. So that will be January 2026. And the next component that will be ready is April 2026, where the day-ahead market component, the ISO component, where ISO has a day-ahead market, as well as they're planning to implement the EDAM in the spring of 2026. So those entities that can provide those ARs into those processes, technically they should be able to use once in April 2026, once the tools are ready. At the same token, there's a couple of components that the RC West will be enabling, because it's the same part of the same package. Siemens is the vendor for this. Is the RC West, the look ahead process, especially the day ahead reliability process, the D2 process, as well as the short-term outage studies, right? I think not that many people are aware, even the short-term outage studies technically should be using these ARs. What does that mean? Anything up to 7 days outage studies that RC West has should be able to use those ARs, the hourly ratings that are coming in the processes. So we plan to enable those in April 2026 when the code is ready. So those are the big changes from an RC West customer's point of view. The other July 2026, it's mostly for ISO in the sense, so there's a usage of AR in the ETCC as well as the TTC calculations, especially ISO has planning to use in the COI. There's obviously COI has a big impact, more regional impact, but COI TTCs has to be updated based upon the AR adjustments. So this is another big change that needs to happen for ISO. A new tool has to be developed, and our engineering teams are working towards that. Any questions on this phased implementation? So technically, this is the phase that ISO RCVS is following, in the sense that from a tool implementation point of view, the other deadlines are for each PTO and TOP based upon when they are ready to use these processes. Elena, I don't see any hands raised, but if there's any questions, let me know.
Yeah, there's one hand in the chat from Stephen Ashbaker. What if FERC denies extension request?
Steve, that's a really good question. We had to figure it out at this point. The tools will not be ready, so hopefully FERC will not deny. Again, we are not alone on this boat. Pretty much all the ISOs that we have been talking with in the Eastern Interconnect, they are planning. They are either they are filing or they're pretty close to filing their extension. So it's not just one entity. And at least we are hoping that FERC takes that into cognizance. Hope that answers your question, Steve. Yeah, if they deny, yeah, again, it's not good. We're not going to be compliant, as simple as that. If they deny, there's no way the tools will be ready.
Raja, for that. And then we have a hand from Daniel Kops.
Hey, Daniel, go ahead.
Hey, just a question for you, Raja, on your June 2025 implementation of your WebLenR tool. So is that is that going to be ready prior to June for testing with entities that need to send data to it, or is June when it will actually be live and testing will be able to begin?
I think there's I know our IT has posted some timelines associated with that. There's going to be market sim in April, I believe, even before the June 2025, Daniel, but I can check the timeline and send back to you with information. I know they have some separate schedule that they have already posted through different forums, but I can send you the information out.
Yeah, it's open for provisioning right now, and there was actually market sim training yesterday. So yeah, that's in process right now, Daniel.
Okay, thank you.
I see no other hands or questions in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. Yeah, I think one more thing that I know we have been having some conversations with the different entities, especially on the TTC. How do you calculate TTC using AR? My engineering team has developed a process, so we are definitely, again, we are still talking internally about that. So the team has developed a process in the sense this is still an exploratory way where they want to calculate the TTC hourly based upon adjusted changes, right? You have to perform transfer analysis. So I could definitely set up a session if entities are interested to learn about that. I can ask my engineering team to set up that and see and share what we are planning to do, because that is a big lift, especially if you have to calculate transfer analysis and actually perform those analysis and actually calculate the TTC every hour. Thank you.
If we go to the next slide, it's the ETC expansion, and I think that's Raja as well.
Yep. Thank you. This is another big effort. I know most of you on this forum are aware of it, right? There's been at least last 1.5 year ECC working group that has the RC West, SPP, as well as some of the TOPs, representatives. They've been working towards expanding the existing tool, and we haven't issued a white paper. And the last year, that white paper went through different forums, and this forum actually approved that white paper. So what does that mean? I'll talk about the next steps on that, what we have been working on. Next slide, please. So right now, there's two things that we're working. The white paper has been approved. There's two components in the white paper. The first one is the benchmarking the existing ECC tool. What does that mean, right? So both SPP and RC West, we have biweekly calls between the two entities, working towards technically we already started the benchmarking. This is the February 1st. We effectively started, but we don't have a tools to show any data. OETA is actually working towards collecting the information every month and providing the data to RC West and SPP, and we plan to collect that information and prepare charts, and where we can share that information with the stakeholders, right? So, which we haven't done that yet, so that's why I don't have anything to show. But once that is done, our hope is to use the benchmarking process to identify any mapping issues, any modeling issues, and fix those. When we, along with that, we are embarking on the NASB process. What does that mean, right? Why do we need the NASB process? If you're aware in the white paper, there are two things. There's two things. It's supposed to be RC-led process. RCs can ask for any specific curtailment on an SOL or IRL, and then the tool will provide relief. But for the tool to calculate the relief on every SOL, you need a curtailment methodology, right? You need a process where it can identify what's firm, what's non-firm on the tags. On tags, it is easy. But what about the generation to load, especially a BA serving their own load? It is not that easy to calculate the firm, non-firm. And that is where this NASB process will help us. This process will help us to identify that. How do you define firm? How do you define non-firm on the gen to load serving a BA serving their own load? And then once you're able to identify, how do you curtail that, right? So there's different methodology that the white paper presented, but it has to be standardized. And that is where the NASB comes in. So we have worked with NASB late last year, NASB Executive Committee, and they have volunteered to take on this effort for us. And they created a task force, and the task force actually started this morning. The first meeting was this morning. The task force will help us at the end of the day work through the stakeholder process and create a standard, and then the standard once it gets approved by the stakeholder community. When I say stakeholder community, everybody that participates in the NASB processes, they'll get to vote on that. And once it goes through that, once it gets standardized, and after that, FERC backing, then most probably FERC has to back this effort. Once that is done, we can take on that process, that curtailment methodology, and implement that in the ECC tool. So then after that, you can start using the ECC tool to actually provide relief on SOLs across the Western Interconnection. So it's a big effort which we have embarked on. So there's different phases for that, as I mentioned. We will update the teams. We'll update this oversight committee as we go into the process. I'll take a moment and see if there's any questions from anybody. Next slide, please. So this is one more information. What does the benchmarking will do, right? This is in the sense, as I mentioned, improve the model as well as improve the calculations. So what does that mean, improve the calculations, right? In the sense, there's a WebECC model that actually RC West every 15 minutes submit the state estimation model to that, right? And that model, it's a combination of all the information that we have collected from across the Western Interconnect stakeholders, right? So this benchmarking will help us. We have agreed upon a specific set of constraints that we're going to monitor, both SPP and RC West, right? And then once we start monitoring, we're going to calculate a couple of things, right? I have one more slide to talk more about that. What the calculations are. So if you take an example, if you take a constraint, right? If you take a simple constraint, n-1 constraint, right? So you have your monitored flow, and you have contingency flow. So the tool is going to show us, okay, these are the flows existing on that constraint. Now the tool is going to calculate based upon the tag impacts, based upon the generation to load impacts, right? Based upon the phase shift impacts, right? It's going to calculate the total impact that the tool is estimating, right? So if all the modeling is accurate, if the tool is calculating the right calculations, right impacts, whatnot, the total summation of this calculated impact should be close to the flows on this constraint, right? So that is what the benchmarking effort will help us, right? So if the flows are not matching, right, then something is wrong, right? I mean, obviously you cannot expect it's not going to be zero ever, but the same token, it should not be like 40% missing, right? What does that mean? It's not accounting, right? At the end of the day, if you have a total flow, you subtract all your impacts, and it's missing 40%. So something is not right with either source and sink modeling, or the tool calculations, or maybe the network model itself, right? So this benchmarking will help us identify that and fix things. And as you start fixing things, your flows and your calculations should match pretty closely, right? And that's what this whole overall effort is. So I'll show the next slide that talks more in detail. And if people has access to the ECC, next slide, please. So I know you cannot see, it's really gray, it's really small, but if you take the first, right, this is what I'm trying to say. You took the first constraint. It's really small, but can I zoom in? But anyway, I think we'll share this presentation, but ultimately our intention is we have defined roughly 40 different constraints in the ECC tool, and both SPP and RC West. And as we start collecting this data, we're going to see how well the flows are tracking, how well the impact calculations are tracking. And then if you compare those two, you should be able to identify how much is not being accounted, how much flows the tool is not accounted. And you start deep diving into each of those constraints and fix modeling, fix issues. So those accounting should be closely matching with the flows. and that will help us with benchmarking. So what does this effort do, right? Apart from improving model, improving calculations, this would be a big tool that can actually show what are the things that are flowing in a constraint, right? If you take any constraint, today the biggest concern that we have is across the Western Interconnect is how do you identify who's actually impacting that constraint, right? That is the big unknown, right? So this tool will help us demystify some of those, right? If you're able, if all the calculations are accurate, the modeling is pretty close to be accurate, then you're able to quickly identify, I have a constraint, and what are all the things that are impacting? The tag impacts, a BA serving their own impacts. So that should help us with any particular operational issues across the seams, across the TUP seams or the RC seams, even before the curtailment methodology is fully approved and implemented, right? So in the meantime, this benchmarking should help us with any better operational coordination between TOPs. That's why RC both RC West and SPP are supporting this, and this is a big effort that we're undertaking. But the value of reliability is humongous from this type of tools. So stop here and see if there's any questions.
No questions in the chat, and everyone's able to, you can use the plus and the minus to zoom in on your individual screen. There's not a way we can zoom for everyone at once, but it is pretty small. It stays kind of blurry even when it's zoomed in, just FYI.
Thank you, Elena. If there's no questions, I can hand off to the next presenter. I think that is this last slide.
Thanks so much, Raja. I think you have one more slide after this.
Okay, I think I talked about this again. Okay. I think again, I see this as a really valuable tool for operational seams concerns.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to slide 37. Thank you for that presentation, Rajan. So this is just our slide for our next upcoming meeting and where you can email topic suggestions. I'm going to hand it over to Tricia or Ashley if there's anything, or John Phipps if there's anything that you want to cover in the wrap up.
I think just for the next meeting on May 15th, that'll be kind of coinciding with when we're working on our summer readiness activities. So that will be a big focus with that next agenda. But if there are any particular topics, that public audience would like us to cover in the public forum, we would, definitely be open, to hearing those. And then, of course, for the Oversight Committee, definitely send those in, Chris, Ashley, or to the mailbox direct. And then we're going to be transitioning over to the executive session. I don't know, does everybody need a break? I think we're actually scheduled for the executive session, Yelena, at 2:30. Do we want to go ahead and just take a break and pick that up at 2:30?
I think that's up to how we want to do that. Usually we say immediately, but I think 2:30 would be fine as well. And then if we can open this up for public comment too before we adjourn.
Yep. Ashley, is that good for you if we give everyone a break?
That's fine with me.
John, did you have something?
Nope, I was going to do exactly what you said. Let's see what Ashley feels, and if Chris, if they want to keep moving on or take a break. So it sounds like we all agree a break, so we would reconvene at 2:30.
Sounds good.
Wonderful. That sounds good. All right. Okay.
Thanks.
All right, we're going to open this for any public comments. Okay. Seeing none, we're going to adjourn this session. Thank you, everybody, for your participation in discussion, and for those joining the executive session, we will see you on the other WebEx invite at 2:30. Thank you.